Another meeting of the Planning, Zoning, and Historical Committee meeting, which humbly I believe is the best in the council. I don't know what you guys think. Probably not. Okay. So before we start, as we wait for people to walk in, I'm going to ask Lisa to give us a short update on the efforts by the planning staff to work on engagement with the community.
Sure. So something that we've been looking at, of course, continually, and something that we're always interested in is engaging the community in the various planning processes, including community plan updates, rezonings. The Planning Commission recently had a training session. Those are noticed and open to the public if anyone is ever interested in attending. And the focus of that was on our community engagement activities and doing outreach with diverse groups of the community to get ideas on how we can better serve and better perform that function, to make sure that we're hearing from all members of the community and to make sure that everyone is able to engage in those processes. So it's ongoing conversations, but it's definitely something that we're focusing on and working towards.
Thank you, Lisa. Councilor Murphy, you wanted to talk about this?
I did. I wanted to ask. So are we able to request that the Planning Commission, I mean, I know that y'all have limited time, but y'all are talking about like civic organizations, neighborhood groups, kind of the gamut of just community outreach and groups in Davidson County, whether that be like a professional organization of like, say, engineers or landscape architects or just neighborhood associations?
So we're looking now at kind of a new organization or new neighborhood outreach section of our department. And so we haven't come up with the strategy yet. Right now we're doing outreach to different groups of people to see what is the best strategy to achieve the goals. And so we have not come up with the strategy yet. It's an ongoing process. We're looking at how to make sure that people are engaged in kind of the different planning processes that we go through, the community plan updates and rezonings and those sorts of things, to make sure that there is good public engagement and that people feel like they have the opportunity. And so we're still coming up with the strategy, and we haven't finalized that.
Well, I would just thank y'all for engaging the community and encourage you to continue to meet with every different type of organization, from professional organizations to community groups, and anything that the council can help facilitate that would be encouraged. And so thank you for your time and effort.
And council member, that's something that we can help them by sharing with them ideas on better ways to engage, because as your representative in the commission, I attended a meeting recently and they were very interested in having better ways to be more engaged and to get that feedback they need to serve the city better. So thank you, Lisa. And thank you, council member. So I guess we have a quorum. Oh, council member Withers, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Benet. And I just wanted to plug as well, Neighbor to Neighbor, which formerly was known as the Neighborhoods Resource Center, is doing some great work with neighborhood organizations. I think planning staff are working with them. That's certainly a really good organization that's has a lot of moderating skills to bring folks with different perspectives into a room and come up with productive outputs. So I look forward to seeing what that collaboration comes up with.
Good point. All right, we're going to start with the best part of the meeting, which is the reading of the consent agenda. So I'm going to ask you if there's any item that you want to pull out, that you use the code word, or maybe you can just raise your hand or something to that effect, all right? Anybody with the exception of Councilmember Hall. All right, so we're going to start. Resolution RS 2018-1504 by O'Connell and Bedney. It authorizes the BOP Nashville LLC to construct and install an aerial encroachment at 501 Fifth Avenue South. Next item. RS 2018-1528 by O'Connell. It authorizes 409 Broadway Venture, LLC to construct and install an aerial encroachment at 409 Broadway. BL 2018-1361 by Councilmember Hall. It changes 8.93 acres from RS15 to SP zoning on property located at 4927 Buena Vista Pike to permit up to 34 multifamily residential units and 8 single-family residential lots. BL 2018-1363 by Councilmember Hueso and Glover. It changes, yes, Councilmember Syracuse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to request that 1363 be taken off consent.
Okay, all right, so we'll remove that one. Councilmember Johnson?
I'm sorry, Chair. I missed the opportunity, but I would like to pull out RS 2018-1504 for the little bit clarification, and also BL 2018-1361 for a little question.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item is BL 2018-1420 by Bedney and O'Connell. It authorizes the Metro government to acquire temporary and permanent easements for the Clean Water Nashville Hurricane Creek Pipe Improvement Project for 18 property located along Murfreesboro Road, Hurricane Creek Boulevard, J.P. Hennessy Drive, Hale Quaker Boulevard, Bridgestone Parkway, and Firestone Parkway. And there is a proposed substitute, so should we pull it out? We're going to remove this one as well, on advice of our council. All right. Next item on the consent agenda is BL 2018-1421 by Council Members Dowell, Burchett, and others. It authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements and property rights for purposes of the roundabout at Blue Hole Road and Peters Road, BL 2018-1422 by Henderson, Bedney, and O'Connell. It authorizes Metro to accept permanent and temporary easements for the Clydillian, I don't know how to say that, Clydillian Court Stormwater Improvement Project for 15 properties located at Clydillian Court, Cheek Road, and Meadowwood Drive. BL 2018-1423 by Sledge, Bedney, and O'Connell. It authorizes LBH LLC to install, construct, and maintain underground and aerial encroachments in the right-of-way located at 1234 Martin Street. BL 2017-897 by Councilmember Scott Davis. It changes 0.34 acres from RS5 to R6A zoning on property located at 1001 West McKinney Avenue. There is a letter to approve. BL 2018-1288 as amended by Councilmember Withers. It amends the Metro Code pertaining to parking requirements for certain type of uses. Yeah, we are pulling out this legislation at the request of Councilmember O'Connell. BL 2018-1346. It changes 0.6 acres from IWD to MULA zoning for property located at 924 Vine Street. BL 2018-1364 by Roberts and Kindle. It changes 0.68 acres from SPR to RM20-A zoning for property located at, you want to pull that one out? All right. Councilmember Johnson's requested the removal. BL 2018-1384 by Councilmember Hastings. It changes 1.76 acres from IWD to MULA zoning for property located at 1110, 1112 Baptist World Center Drive, 1100, 1111, 1115 Spurgeon Avenue, Victoria Avenue and number, and Spurgeon Avenue and number. There is the letter to approve. Bill 2018-1393 by Council Members Robert and Kindle. It changes 1 acre from RS5 to MULA zoning for property located at 2702, 2704, 2706 Clifton Avenue. And yes, ma'am. Remove this one? All right, thank you. Councilmember, oh, okay. So 1393 and 1394 are being removed. All right, thank you. Next item is BL 2018-1396 by Councilmember Haywood. It changes 4.23 acres from R15 to SP zoning for a property located at West Camp Road and numbered to permit up to 50,000 square feet of self-service storage. And the last item on the consent agenda is BL 2018-1401. It changes 2.68 acres from RM20 to MULA zoning for property located at 1501 Herman Street and Herman Street unnumbered. Do you guys need me to read you the items that remain in the agenda? Or you're good? Somebody wants to make a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor say aye. Oppose? It passes. All right. So we're going to start going over the items that are not on consent. The first one, RS 2018-1504 by O'Connell and Bedne. It authorizes BOP Nashville LLC to construct and install an aerial encroachment at 501 Fifth Avenue South. Councilmember O'Connell, if I can find you. There you go.
We're on 1504, you said?
1504.
Okay, I didn't intend to pull this. If someone else did, I'm happy
Yeah,
to.
somebody else did. I just wanted
Okay.
to be.
No, as far as I know, this is just another aerial encroachment.
All right. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Oh, never mind. I know why. Yes, we discussed this last time. Correct. So I will let Council Lady Johnson have the floor here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. I think I questioned because of the original short-term rental bill under Bill 2014-951. There was a restriction on the signage, signs, advertising, or any other display on the property indicating that the dwelling unit is being utilized in whole or in part as a short-term rental is prohibited. So I think that language would apply to powered by Airbnb, but I understood our Council Jameson's analysis is because it's under sign ordinance, the Mary mention of the Airbnb does not violate current sign regulations. So I just want to clarify if indeed that is correct. There's no conflict with the reference with under the short-term rental property language in regards to the sign.
That is correct, Council Lady. BL 2017-608, the most recent ordinance on STRP regulations, did provide that short-term rentals do come under the general sign provisions. Those general sign provisions are essentially content neutral. There is no specific prohibition on them, including a reference to Airbnb or other short-term rental companies. So it does comply with the sign code.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate the sponsor of the bill entertaining this idea, and I have no problem with that.
In which case, and I have correspondence echoing what Mr. Jameson just told this committee, and so I think with that degree of comfort, I'm comfortable moving the bill. So I'd like to move approval.
So we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry? Aye? Councilmember Allen, sure.
Thank you. I apologize that I have not done my homework on this. If I can ask the sponsor, is this in an area zoned residential or commercial?
This is in the downtown code.
Downtown code.
So it is, I mean, this is a fully urban scenario. It's, you know, under the terms of, I think the intent of BL 2017-608, this would qualify for this use, and I think is not inconsistent with our overall citywide approach. So
Okay, I'm
yeah.
comfortable with that then. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so anybody opposed? I mean, you already say yes, no opposed, then the motion passes. Thank you. Next item that was removed was BL 2018-1361 by Councilmember Hall. Who asked to be removed? Council Lady Johnson, Mina Johnson, did you ask for 1361 to be removed?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yes, at the November 6th public hearing, there was some questions and concerns, and I believe bill's sponsor deferred this bill so he can have community meeting and answer whatever the community had the question that time. So I just wanted to follow up with the sponsor of the bill, or the questions and concerns was answered.
Well, I'll move it to the Hill, and then we'll talk about it when he comes back, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item that was removed was Bill 2018-1363 by Weso and Glover. Who asked it to be removed? Yes, Councilmember Syracuse. Sure, hold on. Would you mind pushing the button? Thank you.
Just as a, I guess, formality.
Yes.
Shouldn't we ask for a motion to move it before we start having discussion? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that's how we operate, isn't it?
You move.
Well, I don't, I can ask people whatever question I think that is appropriate. So I was asking her why she removed it, and she was getting ready to answer. I appreciate your recommendation. So who was? Councilmember Syracuse. Do you mind pushing the button? I can see this. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe in my term I've ever really gotten involved in another council member's rezoning issue, but this being bordering my district, I have heard from important constituents there. 2 meetings ago, we did move to defer this with the request that there be additional community engagement to surrounding property owners. That, to my knowledge, has never happened. Now we have an amendment here that those constituents have not even seen. So I wish that the sponsor were even here to.
I have to apologize. I have a note here that the amendment is being removed. So that is not being offered. So I should have shared that information with you.
I appreciate that. There's still concerns that, but perhaps the co-sponsor, I guess, could address those. I'd like to hear about it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Glover, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think because I made some phone calls today, and I haven't spoken to the sponsor. From my standpoint, I did try to find out if there had been a community meeting, and apparently they have not. So I wanted to ask the question, and again, I'm doing this because I haven't spoken to the sponsor. Mr. Jameson, what is the best way to where we don't throw this thing into an indefinite deferral? I mean, should we defer it 1 or 2 meetings? What's going to be the best move? Because I think they are trying to get a community meeting set up. It just has not occurred because of it being, we're heading into the holidays and there's been a lot going on.
Just because of the calendar, I would recommend a deferral request for 2 meetings that at least get you to January 15th. The committee has already used its automatic deferral bullet once, so a deferral recommendation from this committee is not binding on the full council, but with your request or with the sponsors, a 2-meeting deferral should be adopted and allow for the meeting to take place.
Then I think, because I agree, I think the community meeting should happen. Again, it's just something that timing did not allow. So with that, I will move for a 2-meeting deferral till the 2nd meeting in January.
Any more discussion on the subject? No, and I have a second over there. So all in favor say aye. Oppose? Thank you, Councilmember Glover. Next item is BL 2018-1420 by Bedney and O'Connell. It authorizes the Metro government to acquire temporary and permanent easements for the Clean Water Nashville Hurricane Creek Pipe Improvement Project for 18 property located along Murfreesboro Road, Hurricane Creek Boulevard, Hennessy Drive, Hell Quaker Boulevard, Bridgestone Parkway, and Firestone Parkway. Who asked to be
I think this one was this not our legal counsel recommending that we discuss this? I think there was a change to the bill. Am I correct about that, Mr. Jameson?
Correct. There's a substitute that adds 10 properties, so it has to be off the consent.
Right. So in which case, I'd like to move the substitute.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Is there a second? Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Oppose? So the substitute passes. And now you want to move the
I'd
motion.
like to move the bill as substituted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Oppose? It passes. Thank you. Next item that was removed was BL 2018-1288 by Councilmember Wieters. It amends the Metro Code pertaining to parking requirements for certain types of uses. Would you like to speak about it, Councilmember Wieters?
Thank you, Chair Bedney. This is a bill that I brought forward at the request of constituents. I think in particular in our urban neighborhoods, we have already a lot of fairly intense uses, such as restaurants sometimes or other businesses that open in neighborhoods, and that has a parking spillover effect into the surrounding community. And largely we understand that as it pertains to commercial zoning existing immediately next door to residential zoning in some other areas. Also, within the urban zoning overlay, we have parking requirement reductions that are approved in the code if you are, if a business is less than a certain number of square feet, if it is on a bus line or on a sidewalk network and things like that. And I think all of those make sense. One of the frustrations that some of my constituents, particularly in the 5 Points area, are experiencing is that we have any number of businesses that sometimes open up, and they are all theoretically claiming the same parking spaces toward their building permit or their use and occupancy permit, and those are sort of being granted by codes with the fallout that you would imagine, which is that a whole bunch of people are claiming the same parking space toward their building or use and occupancy permit or vehicles that are going to be using them at the same time. And then that leads to problems not only for residents, but even for other businesses. And so what this bill seeks to clarify is that if your business permit is based upon availability of a certain number of parking spaces, that those parking spaces must be available to the occupants of your business. Doesn't say that they can't be, like, you can still have a paid lot, you can have a shared lot. In fact, I think Councilmember Allen brought a very useful amendment to say that this would not count if there's a shared parking plan. Because I think that's, again, is totally fine. It makes sense to have a traffic engineer sign off on a shared parking plan if you have different businesses that would be using the same parking space at different times of the day. That's totally great. But what this bill seeks to do is a statement of intent that if we do have parking requirements, that those parking spaces need to be available to the occupants of those businesses. And that's the motivation for it. I introduced this legislation. I deferred it a couple of times at council, or at the Planning Commission, rather, in order to allow more feedback. In one instance, it had actually been on the consent agenda at the Planning Commission a couple of times. At one of those, I pulled it off of the consent agenda at the last minute in order to defer it again. I referred it to the chamber to seek feedback from their membership. No feedback has come at any of those or at the public hearing. So this is one of those where if I do have concerns from colleagues, I'm happy to defer it again. I'm not necessarily in any urgency to pass it, but I have made a number of efforts through public hearings, if there was no commentary pro or con, to defer it and re-advertise it. And I just haven't received that feedback. But again, the intent is to say that if we as a government are stipulating that your permit is contingent upon the availability of a certain number of parking spaces, that those need to remain available to those occupants.
Does anybody want to? Yeah, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Pedney. I'm not on this committee, so I would defer to other colleagues if they want to. But may I ask a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate Councilman Withers' work on this. I know this is very complicated, and it sounds like it's been quite some time, and there have been numerous forums, and he's solicited a lot of feedback. So I do genuinely appreciate that. I do, in just a general sense, do have some concerns because I do feel strongly, colleagues, that we as a city need to address parking policy comprehensively. I think it is a key factor in housing affordability. It is a key factor in kind of just mobility issues. And so I wonder if the sponsor might speak to his willingness to perhaps defer it and consider it more broadly, but I don't want to put asunder his good efforts here. So I just wonder if we could, if he would be willing to kind of answer about that context, please.
Sure, and I appreciate that question. One thing I want to speak to specifically is this does not address residential. It specifically is for businesses, for business uses. And so I definitely agree that we need to look at it comprehensively. In certain areas, you know, we actually do have a large number of surface parking spaces, and we definitely want folks walking and using transit to get to businesses. What the frustration that a lot of my constituents have felt is that already, you know, again, we have parking requirement reductions in some of these areas, which if I could get folks not to have every single person at a restaurant drive to that restaurant, it would make it easier to open restaurants. For example, even where we have bus lines, particularly along Main and Gallatin, if you look at, and I live 4 doors from Gallatin, so if you look at restaurants that open along Gallatin where we do have bus lines and parking reductions, you see that the streets surrounding it are clogged with a bunch of cars. And then sort of the result of that is what you then end up with, because of that lack of planning, as well as lack of use of public transit, the path of least resistance is for all these business patrons or employees to drive, and then that creates tension with the residents, and then you get a push among the residents for residential permit parking. So all this does is specifically, as this one piece of it, is to say that for business uses, it's totally fine if you have a private management company that pays it. We understand that we can't regulate private contracts. But if your permit is contingent upon having this many spaces within that reduced parking scheme, that they need to be available to them, because what we're getting is that 3 or 4 or 5 different businesses are all saying, oh, well, that's our parking, and then codes and gives them a permit, and then it creates this problem because all those people are theoretically using that same parking space even at the same time. And that's why, again, I really appreciate Councilmember Allen bringing the shared parking plan. I think shared parking plans are needed and are great, but we just need a little bit better examination sometimes on the front end by the codes department to make sure that if they are granting a permit contingent upon a certain number of spaces, that those spaces are available to those users. Now, whether or not everyone uses them, other people can certainly use them, but those spaces need to be there and not everyone be counting the same ones at the same time.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me echo Councilor Henderson here in really commending Councilman Withers for, one, I think being extraordinarily responsive to the preferences of his constituents. But, you know, I think the tough part here for me from a citywide policy implication is that, you know, from my perspective in looking at a couple things, right, where like Councilman Withers, I represent a number of urban neighborhoods, many of which have mixed-use areas, you know, that bring residential right up against retail and restaurant uses and other commercial uses, sometimes industrial. So we've seen this challenge, and I worry, though, that since I also represent the one area of the city that I'm aware of that has zero parking requirement in the downtown code, I worried that this actually has an implicit increase of demand for parking, right? And that we wind up with kind of, for anyone who has spent time in Councilman Pulley's main commercial district of Green Hills, rather than having a highly walkable scenario that connects, or a highly just generally connected scenario that brings together this vibrant commercial district, so frequently it winds up in sort of a turf war scenario that simply increases the need for each individual business to have its own parking guarantee, which results in just greater and greater quantities of parking and simply invites ultimately more traffic into the area. And I worry that this actually moves us away from the things that we're pressing forward on, including a curb management program being instituted by the mayor's office from a shared parking scenario that Councilor Allen's working on. And at this time, I think without a little more work on this, I'm not in a position to be able to support it.
Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to the sponsor. I think after a little bit of a aside with Councilor Allen, who's much smarter than I am, I think I understand what the sponsor is trying to attempt. And we are having that. I know you're having that issue. We're having that issue over on 12 South, where we've got an applicant right now, in fact, in front of traffic and parking that says they've got agreements with parking lots, and it's not quite clear whether anybody else has agreements to those parking lots. But in conversations we're having right now, it seems that they might already have some previous existing agreements. So I think this is something that's needed, and we need to put a little bit more focus on. I'm comfortable with it going forward.
Mr. Chair, if I may speak again, I totally appreciate, again, what Councilmember O'Connell and Councilmember Henderson are saying. I think we need all of that. What this gets to, I think, for my constituents, or a lot of constituents that live in urban neighborhoods where we have business and commercial zoning adjacent to residential, is like, downtown code has no parking requirements. If that's where we're going to go as a city, that would be a comprehensive thing. But at least for the time being, what my constituents are saying is that we understand that there are reduced parking requirements, but if you have reduced parking requirements and the codes department in particular is not going to be diligent about ensuring that those parking spaces are available, then why do we have those parking requirements? And so that really is what it is just making sure that if our code says that a certain number of spaces need to be available, that they are available. Because otherwise we do end up with a lot of vagary about folks saying, well, yeah, I've got an agreement with this person over there. No one ever presents any information if that's true. Then someone gets a permit, and then what the neighborhood and frankly the other businesses experience is that because we don't have the parking spaces that were required by the permit, that not only patrons but even employees of those businesses are struggling to get to where they need to be. So this is a sort of a temporary thing. It's really meant as more of a statement of intent of, if we have a requirement for parking space, a certain number of spaces, that they should actually be available, not deeded, not any of that. They can be paid, managed, whatever. But just making sure that our parking space requirements that we have for businesses actually mean something.
Well, clearly, parking is an important concern for people from different parts of the city, and I think it deserves to have a thorough conversation. I mean, this is probably one of the longest conversations we had about an issue here in the Planning Committee since I was elected to the position. So I encourage everybody to maybe set up a meeting just to focus on that issue. I don't even know if it's a planning issue necessarily, as a more inclusive traffic and parking, whatever. So do you have a motion?
I would like to move approval.
You did? You moved to what? I moved for approval. Okay, so we have a motion, and does anybody second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? It passes. Thank you for the conversation. Next item. BL 2018-1364 by Roberts and Kindle. There is a letter to defer to the second meeting in January. You want to speak about it? Okay. Council Lady, you do? Okay. So we have a motion, and do you have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Oppose? All right. BL 2018-1393 by Roberts and Kendall. It changes 1 acre from RS5 to MULA. I read this one already. Who's going to speak about it? I will. So somebody asked me to pull it out. Was you, Councilor Mina Johnson? Yes.
Yes, this one, 1393 and 1394, there was a lot of opposition at the last public hearing. And I think, at this point, I am not comfortable moving forward until I have a discussion and hear from the sponsor of the bill. So for that, I would like to move to defer one meeting and request the presence of the sponsor at the committee meeting.
Okay. The sponsor, he was sick today, so he wasn't going to be here, and he asked me to carry the legislation. So I really cannot speak to the legislation, and I just want to clarify that. You are asking for the 401 meeting. Councilmember Allen?
I'm just, these two bills, 1393 and 1394, were actually part of a group of 4 that all went together. And after the public hearing and the strong opposition to the first 2, Councilmember Kendall deferred the next 2 to February, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if he would be interested in having those all on the same track or not. And maybe he knows something that I don't that makes these 2 different from the next 2, but
Well,
they seem like part of a package deal to me.
I can only tell you that we have a letter to approve. We don't have a letter to defer, so it's at your discretion if you guys want to defer to
Can I
February
ask
or you
one
just
more,
want to
one
defer
more question
meeting.
for Mr. Jameson. So if we defer one meeting and then we decide we need to make it track with the others because this is a zoning bill, we can do that?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, then I'm okay with the one meeting.
So we have a motion to defer one meeting. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye. Oppose? Is your motion the same to the next one, Councilor Johnson? Have the same motion on 1394. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay. Next item is mine and the Councilmember Hall. Does anybody know if Councilmember Hall is around? Would you mind getting him, somebody? All right.
Councilman, while you're waiting on him, do you know what happened on 1364?
If you give me a second, please. Sorry about that. It was deferred to
January.
second meeting in January.
Okay.
All right. BL 2018-1399. That was disapproved by the Planning Commission. It changes 6.72 acres from AR2A to CS zoning for a property located at 1488 and 1492 Bell Road. It's not on consent. I have a substitute that I'm proposing based on the feedback I received from Councilmember Dowell and Mina Johnson, requested that we make that into an SP to have some restrictions on and be more specific on the rezoning. You all should have that SP in front of you. So first I would like to move the substitute. So I move the substitute. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Councilmember Gloria, you want to speak to this? Yes. Okay.
So apparently I get confused on rules sometimes in here. If we're changing it from CS to an SP, does it not have to go back through the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission receives the amendment package just as you do, and if they deem that this would have been a significant change for the commission members, we're typically notified of that. In this instance, this is still keeping the CS as the base zoning when the specifications aren't otherwise applied in the SP, and the SP is more conservative or more restrictive than the CS. The sole purpose for the SP really is to specify some excluded uses. So for that reason, Planning Commission would not typically request this being returned to that body.
Okay, so so is that pretty much so where we are with that?
Thanks. Yes, so from the perspective of planning, this was a request to rezone to CS. It was recommended for disapproval by the Planning Commission given the land use policy. The SP still maintains the commercial uses that are the issue with the land use policy, and so it wouldn't change the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson, Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for changing the restriction. I think after I hear your explanation, having CS is too broad, so changing to SP and restrict some usage is more palatable. However, I do have an overall question because you said there was a policy discrepancy because this side of the, I believe, Bell Road is a neighborhood evolving and base zoning surrounding these properties are still AL2A. So overall community policy, are you envisioning the policy will be changed to accommodate such usage instead of just residential zone only?
Yes, I already requested the Planning Commission, and they can talk about it, to schedule an adjustment of the community plan, and they are going to engage with the community to do that. Instead of doing a spot change, because I knew that the will of the community had changed in recent years for a more walkable community where they could go find places to go shop, go eat a bagel, go to a butcher, whatever. Well, there is no butchers anymore, but you know what I mean. So I expect the community plan to be adjusted accordingly based on the feedback we got at that meeting. So they have it. I already requested that they schedule a community plan adjustment for Bell Road. Yes.
Thank you. So as far as I think you confirmed, you have engaged in the community in a long period of the time, and as far as the community is concerned, they are very much on board of this changing this type of usage in the future. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't approve any. I don't encourage any rezoning to happen unless I have a community meeting that supports it. And in this case, we had a community meeting to talk about it, and people were in support, and that's why I allow it to move forward.
Thank you for the confirmation.
So, are there any questions, comments? So then I would like to move the legislation as substituted. I move and I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, it passes. Councilmember Hall, there were some questions about your legislation. This was the last item, BL 2018-1361. I think Councilmember Mina Johnson had questions, so I'll let her ask you about it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think at the public hearing, after the public hearing, sponsor of the bill deferred this bill to have a community meeting to answer questions and concerns. So I would like to hear from the sponsor, indeed you had a community meeting and all the questions and concerns are adequately addressed.
Yes, thank you. After that last meeting, I did defer so that they could go back. They had 4 community meetings, and actually 2 extra ones, it would be a total of 6. 2 happened under previous council Leonardo. But we had 4 community meetings, and there were still some questions because everybody hadn't attended all of those meetings. And so a few days immediately following that last meeting, those that came to public hearing had a meeting just for that group to get them caught up, address any concerns, and we had 2 of the residents there that were directly impacted because of a property line and a fence, and so those issues have been taken care of by the developer, and so we're good to go.
Thank you for the clarification. So I think another question was like access point. I think the Buena Vista was one access point, and then another one was what they call, Vista View Drive. So those two are the access points. So as far as two access point and the communities are on board and everybody's understand those are the access point, and you have and you as a sponsor and the community has no problem with that design.
Yes, and that actually, the Vista View actually solved part of the issues that were there because people were concerned about the other proposed location that it could be, which was a dead end in Trumpet Court that nobody wanted to cut through. And so they're happy with those 2 points.
I appreciate your clarification. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that this be approved.
Do we have a motion and a second? We have a quorum?
You do.
All in favor, say aye. Oppose? All right, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for participating in the meeting, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.